We are here with John Rankin. And for those of you who don't know who John is, he is known as the Fighting Preacher. John is an ordained minister, father of 4 children, an MMA pioneer, and the perfect person to be working with us here at Exceptional Gent. Today, we're going to, and for the next 12 months, we're going to be bringing you several different segments to talk about improving you as a man and talking about some of those kind of hard to discuss subjects. We're here kind of in a coffee shop kind of talking about things, so it's a little bit noisy in the background, but that's okay. Let me give you a little bit about John. Obviously, he is MMA pioneer, preacher, father of 4. Joined the United States Army in 1993. John gave his life to Christ 1 year later. But not only that is that John understands the healthy balance in being a man and being a father and having all the different roles in his life. John also owns a company called Global Combative Labs. John's company has trained soldiers and civilians for over a decade, is recognized throughout the U.S. and Middle East for defensive tactics and weapons training, which is pretty cool stuff as a guy. We love those kind of things. So, John, is there anything else I missed in your bio? I mean, you're the perfect guy to be talking about some of these things with.
Yeah, the only other two things I would maybe add, if it lends credibility to your audience, is that I'm also an author. I wrote a book called The Fighting Preacher, and it's basically an assortment of articles that I wrote about political stuff, about religious stuff, about being a man, being a father. It's a wide assortment of topics. And then I was featured in the documentary Fight Church, which was all about my particular view of Christianity and how I will blend mixed martial arts with the gospel and how I don't think that that's a disparity. So,
sure. And, the fun thing about Exceptional Gent is we represent a broad scope of all guys of all different spectrums and belief systems and things. But I think the thing that constantly we come back to is that, there's some commonalities within man himself, that the way he was created, whether, people believe in, the different deities or whatever. But I think that ultimately we understand that, men are men and they need each other to survive and they need each other to lift each other. And so I think that the topics that you and I are going to be bringing to the audience over the next 12 months are exciting. Today we're going to be talking about eliminating self-hate. It is at the core of what you believe. It's at the core of what I believe. It helps make us better men by not doing that. So talk to us a little bit why self-hate is really the first thing we need to start with.
Well, the Bible says that as you think, so you are. So if you actually hate yourself and don't have a very good opinion of yourself, everything from there forward is going to be wrong. And when you take the Proverbs and you really consider what it's talking about, that as a man thinketh, so he is, and then you fast forward into the New Testament and some of the things that Jesus says and some of the things that Paul says about the power of the mind and what we believe and what we think, it's not actually what comes out of us that is what defiles us. It's what we think and what we believe that defiles us. So if your starting point is that of hate and disbelief and pity and shame and all that junk, then everything that proceeds forward from that is going to be pity and shame and junk and hate and worthlessness and etc. So if we don't start in the right place, which is our identity in God, our identity in Christ, everything that moves forward from there is going to be really jacked up. So it's the most important thing.
Yeah, 100% agree with that. And, for the watching audience, if you don't have faith or you do have faith, and, this isn't to eliminate you out either way. These are real common things that we see with guys in many different directions. I personally, I do have faith, but that's okay. We want guys who are watching this to say, you know what? I don't believe it. Hey, we at Exceptional Gent are all about loving people at different levels in their life and where you're at and accepting them for who they are. But at the same time, these are common things. Self-pity, talking about, not, if you believe that every day, woe is me, my life sucks, it's terrible. That's what you're going to be. You've hit the nail on the head. So whether it's, written in the Bible or the Talmud or anything you read, it's like, it's got to be here to be able to start. So I think the diagnosis is, yeah, it's a wonderful place to start. how
Yeah.
does it, I
And
mean,
and it, and I love that you said that, because we don't want to eliminate people just because they might not be Christians or
yeah,
people of faith. Tony Robbins. I can go down the list of all of some of these people that are saying the exact same things.
yep,
They just don't do it from a Christian perspective.
yep,
Professional athletes all around the world hire mental strength coaches to teach them how to have a positive mindset and to what we would say live a life of faith and positive belief and these kind of things. So don't eliminate it just because maybe it came from the Bible. Understand that many of the people that are out there doing positive belief and coaching and mental coaching and those kind of things, though they might not draw directly from the Bible, it's all the same thing.
absolutely. And I think that that's the exciting thing about this, is that we're helping guys diagnose the things that are in the internal first. Because, at Exceptional Gent, we can talk about the nose to toes fashion pieces, and we got some awesome stuff coming for this fall. But if the inside doesn't reflect what's on the outside, that's so crucial, because you'll never be able to fix truly what's wrong inside if you don't move to that next level. We've got some really key partners we're going to be working with in the future on those things. And John, why don't we look at, starting off with thinking about, how does a guy even diagnose that he hates himself? Well, how do we start there?
Yeah, the fruit is going to be in his words. Out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. And, just a couple, do your friends say that you're a pretty negative person? Sorry about that. They're making me
That's
shake.
okay. That's all right.
Do your friends say that you're a negative person? Is everything that you look at always come out in negative first? I mean, think about it. If we talk about the language that we use to even justify the negativity, right? I'm the devil's advocate. That's like our kind of cliche word for you're just a really negative person who sees the problems in everything. So there's when you look in the mirror, what do you think? What do you feel? There's tons of ways for you to actually diagnose that you're not in a proper mindset. Is it always everybody else's fault? Is probably another really good indicator. A person with a good self-image and a healthy belief in themselves. We're not talking about ego or arrogance, or just being a plain. Can I say this? Just being a plain ass.
You can say that. No worries. Yeah.
So, those kind of. We're not talking about the other extreme, right? But if those are the kind of things that surround your life, chances are that your self-image is a lot of hate, is a lot of shame, is a lot of guilt. And, there's a way to handle that. There's a way to address that. I think the best way is to take it to the cross, learn who you are in Christ. However, as you said, not everybody is necessarily a religious person. So there's still ways to address that. And I try to share this story as much as possible. You're a father too, right?
Absolutely. I got 4 kids.
Yeah, 4 kids too. That's what I thought. I was like, man, was it 4 kids? I couldn't remember. So imagine that your kid comes home with a couple of grades that really aren't, where they should be. And your response to your kid is, you're stupid, you're lazy, you'll never amount to anything. How does that affect the kid? How does that affect you? What does that say of you, right? And most healthy parents, Christian or not, would not respond to their children that way. So why do we respond to ourselves that way, or why do we believe that God responds to us that way? And you can really take this thing and unpack it and realize that if you really hate yourself, it probably started with your parents, most likely. You were raised in an abusive home, a negative home, a divided home, whatever the story is. And so you were trained that way. So we have to untrain you and then retrain proper things into you. So.
Yeah, agreed. I think that as you were kind of talking about, I was thinking about the idea of behaviors and what that looks like. Not only people being a real pain in the ass, but people, things like multiple sexual partners, heavy drug usage, heavy drinking, those are all signs that, you don't respect your body, you don't respect those around you, and you don't respect the life that you've been given, regardless of how you believe it was given. Those are big things. I mean, how you treat your significant other, how you interact,
how you treat people, period.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And those are real key things. If you're out every single weekend, not only are we wanted at Exceptional Gent get guys to start thinking about, their world and being involved in them around it, that it's more than just you. We want them to think that how does this affect my community? What can I do to better my world around me? And you can't better the world around you if you have these behaviors in your life. And so working on repairing these first and getting them eliminated out of that allows you to take the next step and move, to begin the healing process. And, and for a lot of guys, you're right. They were raised in a really tough environment. I mean, I know several guys throughout the Pacific Northwest area that I've met and got to know who were raised in really tough situations, but they recognized that, they diagnosed it, and they got the help. That's a really, really big factor.
There's an old proverb that says that if you want to change the world, start with yourself.
Absolutely.
So if we want to be men and we want to be respected, then we have to respect ourselves. We have to start with ourselves. We have to change ourselves. Because if we don't start there, then everything else is just symptomatic, and the fruit doesn't fall far from the tree, so to speak. So
it's a generational thing that I've seen. I've had the opportunity to work in the Pacific Northwest with folks who have either lived in generational poverty or generational drug abuse. And, it's often, well, this is all that I know. My dad did this. My mom did this. And, what they don't realize is that your dad did this and your mom did this because they also didn't like themselves. And this is a way for them to escape. So getting help is probably in recognizing that, just like with drug and alcohol addiction, is recognizing you have a problem is the first step to recovery.
Yeah. So in modern psychology, even, they have terms for all this stuff now. In the Bible, we call it generational curse. In the secular psychology realm, they call it a generational pattern.
Yeah.
So even in modern psychology, they're recognizing biblical themes. Of course, they're maybe not against the Bible, but they're for sure not supporting it. So they've come up with new terms. It's now a generational pattern. So if the generational pattern in your house is alcoholism or whatever the story may be, you've got some work to do, and to be a real man, you've got to do that work.
Yeah. The reliance on chemicals and mind-altering substances is the first thing to, sure, it's nice to have a glass of whiskey every once in a while to, kick back and relax, but to have a daily addiction to it is something that, as a man is working to become something other than himself, that, you have to look at, what are the things that are the crutches that are holding me back?
Right.
You can't walk or run properly if you're using a crutch to be able to do that. So let's talk a little bit about so a guy has figured out, man, I'm in a really bad place. And, I grew up in an abusive home or non-abusive, or maybe heavy drug and alcohol usage. Out here in Washington State, slowly the use of different types of drugs is becoming legal. And we want guys to seek things that are better for themselves, regardless of belief systems, orientations, whoever that they may be, but we want them to be better men. How does a guy begin the process of eliminating self-hate out of his life? What does that look like in John's world?
I go back to kind of like some of the stuff that I do with training the military and fighting. You have to start with foundational stuff. If you don't, then it's just going to crumble on you anyway. So, and it's really kind of difficult to say in a vacuum without somebody sitting in front of me and giving me their story. But some of the things that has to happen is that you have to find out who you are first. Identity is what drives everything that we're talking about. If your identity was given to you by your father, which it probably was, and that identity is that of a drunk or that of an idiot or that of a lazy piece of no good trash, or you're just going to be a minimum wage guy who just kind of moves from job to job to job, we have to go back to the root. We have to change the identity. And there's some great stuff out there on this that can really help. Of course, coming from a Christian perspective, if the identity is found outside of Christ, it's going to crumble anyway. But I can trace back and begin to look at my qualities that are God-given and find my identity that way. Who am I? What am I? And too often people choose to identify themselves by what they do. And what we do is not who we are. And men are really suspect to this. So when I meet you, hey, my name's John, how are you? And you're going to ask me, so what do you do? And really what you're asking is, who are you? Because that's the language of men, and we draw identity from work. And not that that's all bad, because obviously we need to work, we need to provide, we need to be strong, we need to be these kind of things. It's when that gets out of balance, so that becomes an issue for us. And and you'll see it. If I draw my identity from my work, I end up spending more time there than anywhere else in the world, because that's my identity. So we have to go all the way back to the drawing board, and we have to say, who am I? And it's the greatest secret ever. I forget, I'm drawing a blank of his name right now, but one of the things he has his guys do, and he says to do it for 30 days, is that he wants you to take out an index card, and he wants you to write on that index card who you want to be, where you want to be, and what are your goals. And every morning when you get up and you look in the mirror, to read that identity card. Not only the Bible, but secular psychology of our words really has been underutilized, because it not only does it actually literally change the atmosphere around us, it changes us. It changes the chemistry in our brain. And so when I read that card, I want to get up and I want to say, whatever that story is for whoever we're talking about. I have goals, and I look at them often. I know I wasn't meant to have a minimum wage job. I know that I'm the son of the king. And as the son of the king, that leads me into a certain belief. And so it's a funny story, but I met somebody of royalty and for a potential contract. And I was really nervous about it because I'd never met anybody that was like genuinely royalty, right? And I just really was getting out of sorts about it. And then I just felt like God's telling me, you're the son of a higher king. What are you worried about? And it just kind of struck me as, that's right. I am. I'm the son of a higher king. I don't care if he's a prince. Like, what difference does that make? And I say that to bring it back to our identity. My identity is that I'm a son of God. Like, if I believe that and I understand what a good father looks like, it should drive all of the rest of it.
Sure. And I think for guys watching is to think about that piece that John talked about, goal setting. I think that goals drive a man to change. It could be something as simple as, I'm going to get up and I'm going to brush my teeth every single morning. And in January, we'll be talking about goal setting and what that looks like and how that is so vitally important. I mean, every day I get up, and I got to tell you, small confession time here. For the last 2 weeks, I have not gone up and done my morning routine, and it's been downright awful. Usually I get up, I go run, I come home, I write my goals out for the day, and then I begin to accomplish things. And with as busy as I've been with all the work that I do throughout the Pacific Northwest, I got off track with my goal setting, and it threw me off completely. And I have seen the direct correlation between goals and what I'm achieving in my life. And I begin to regress, and I can physically feel the change as well. And so I think you're talking about that exercise, guys, about taking a 3x5 card and writing your daily goals on it and saying, I'm going to accomplish this. I want to be this, and this is who I am, and this is where I want to go. Some people, create vision boards. I've looked at that before, where you have the visual images. I know several friends who vision board. It's very powerful stuff. It chemically changes you up here to want to push you to achieve more. I once knew a guy who had a vision board he created in high school, and he looked at it every single day. He knew what he wanted to become. He knew what he wanted to accomplish in life. And he put it away when he went to college and kind of forgot about things. And then years later, he pulled the thing out, was looking at it, was sitting kind of propped it up on his desk at work and was looking over it, and realized when he looked at the picture of the house that was on there, it looked almost identical to the house that he lived in now.
Yeah.
And some people may think that's woo-woo, but I think there's 100% legitimacy to that. If you're a guy watching this for the first time today and you're hearing what John and I are saying, irregardless of where you're coming from in life, that you can look at and go, it's something as simple as a 3x5 card that you can carry in your wallet, and every morning pull it out when you're waking up and look at that thing. I personally have a picture that's on my phone that, with my own journey in life, I've lost over 65 pounds in the last, 18 months. And I look at that picture of what I call Fat Jay every single morning. And I go, I don't want to be that guy again. And I look at that and go, okay, get your butt over the edge of the bed and get on the treadmill. But to have those things that you say, I want a nicer car. I want to find a quality relationship in my life. I want to buy a home. I want to contribute back to the community. And it doesn't have to be big things, guys. It could, like I said, it could be something as simple as, I'm going to get up this morning and I'm going to brush my teeth. That's the place where you start at. But goals are really that first piece to get started. What about, connection with a mentor, connection with someone in your community that can maybe help you talk through that? What are your thoughts on that?
I don't think you can do it without it. So it was a great movie, 300, written about, the Spartans and the battle that took place at Thermopylae. And Leonidas is basically taken 300 guys. He knows it's a suicide mission, and he asks for volunteers. And what doesn't get shown in the movie is that all of Sparta is going to go with, but they can't. And Leonidas knows that. And what had happened in Sparta, and it's some great stuff inside of their culture. There's some stuff that obviously we don't want to mimic, but one of the things is that the shield was the most important part of their armor. And it was the most important thing. If you lost your helmet or your sword, you could be forgiven. But if you lost your shield, you could never be forgiven. And the reason is because if you lost your shield, you couldn't protect the man to your left. And so the way that the formations and the phalanx worked is that shield was important for the protection of the people around. Spartans had a whole systemic vision of how they wanted brotherhood to work, and brotherhood and mentorship, and they had trainers and they had people that would take on personal responsibility with each soldier. And what it did was made probably one of the most effective fighting forces that the world has ever seen. And that's really important for us today. Again, there's things inside that culture that we don't want to mimic, but it's really important for us to have a guy that's going to stand by us through help and is going to hold us accountable. And when we lay down the shield, he's going to reach over and slap us in the back of the head and go, you need to pick that thing up. You're not just in a fight for you. And one of the greatest lines ever from the book, not from the movie, is that there's no greater man than the man who's willing to fight for his gods, his home, or his city, his family, and his children. And their whole culture was built around this idea that they're not fighting for glory. They're fighting for the honor of their God. They're fighting for the honor of their city and their families, their wives, their children. And it really takes a whole culture and it takes a partnership of another man to drive us in that way. Because when it gets tough, man, maybe we curl up and we quit. But we would not curl up and quit if there's a man that stands next to us and calls us on. He goes, hey, man, you've got kids. What are you thinking? You need to stand up. You need to pick your shield up and get back in the fight. And it's so important to have that mentor in your life, that coach in your life, that right-hand guy that's going to call you on your BS. Because if you don't have it, when it gets tough, you can quit.
Agreed. And I think that obviously you were in the service, and thank you for your service. Fantastic. We wouldn't be where we're at right this moment if it wasn't for guys like you, John. I've heard the term battle buddy. That's another one. I was in law enforcement years ago, and it was your partner. It was the person in the car with you. That was typically the person that was in your life that was, keeping you on the straight and narrow, and it went back and forth. Accountability, mentorship is so crucial. And That's just another one of those pieces. You go from the goals to the accountability, thinking, who can I bring into my life and say, you know what, that person is going to be the person that's going to kick me in the butt every single time and say exactly that. Pick up your shield and keep going. Don't stop, even when you feel like stopping. I've got a guy right now, when I wasn't, for the last couple of weeks, not being the guy who I needed to be, he picked up the phone and called me and said, what are you doing, man? I'm not seeing you here in the morning. You need to get your head on straight. And it kicked me in the rear end to get me going again.
Yep. Well, and here's the other thing, going back to the kind of self-hate thing, if you have somebody that believes in you, they can begin to speak life into you. You might not believe it, but they believe it. And if they say it enough and you trust them enough, maybe you can adopt it. And hopefully with them, speaking of a mentor or a good relationship, they believe in you enough that you believe them. And that could be a really foundational piece for you starting into a journey of being who you're supposed to be. Absolutely.
Thinking of having good, strong people in our life to be able to lift us up, on the opposite end of the spectrum, this is something I look at guys who have struggled through life is you got to eliminate the bad friends. You got to eliminate the toxicity of your life. And I think that's probably the next step in this, is really evaluating who's dragging me down, who's telling me I can't accomplish things, and thinking to that. What are your thoughts on that?
Missionary dating doesn't work. That's what my thoughts on it are. Right? So it's a tongue-in-cheek joke, but growing up, you hear these girls that date these really horrible guys, and they think that because they're great girls that they can bring them up, and it just doesn't ever really work out. On a rare occasion, it might. In the Army, we actually have a philosophy on this, which is that you never rise to the occasion. You fall to your lowest level of training. And that's kind of this kind of idea here. So if you've got 9 broke friends, you're the 10th.
Agreed. And I know in my own life, there was a period in time where I ran around with people who were drug users, and I ran around with people who were drinkers and partiers. And, when I separated myself from those people, it was hard, really hard. I gave up a dream that really I thought was going to be, I thought I was going to be a police officer for the rest of my life. And you know what? I gave it up because of the crowd that I ran with, the place I was living, all those things. And, for guys who think that they're accomplishing something in life, but having toxic friends, male or female, in your life, sometimes you've got to walk away from those relationships and cut it off cold turkey and not even give an explanation as to why. You are too important, guys. If you are hearing this and listening to this, John and I both truly believe that you are too important to just continue on in the place that you're at. That's why we're having these conversations that, this is raw. This are things that guys don't talk about. And these are the things we want to bring forward to you each and every month here at Exceptional Gent. And John is awesome. He knows the stuff. He teaches, he's seen guys at the highest of highs and the lowest of lows. And I think that having friends that are going to lift you up versus tear you down it's what makes you and pushes you to being exceptional. It's the difference between great and exceptional. And if guys are looking at you going, you know what, you can be better than that. I know you can. I know you got it. And you pick up the shield and keep going. Again, that's the piece I think is so important. So get rid of those toxic friends is the third step in that. And guys, we're going to list these down below in the video and kind of summarize what John and I are talking about. So you can kind of go back and go, what are some things I need to remind yourself daily of the things to focus on? I think going into kind of the next thing, John, near and dear to both of our hearts is our physical health when it comes to kind of getting to that part of the continuing to push yourself, getting self-hate out of your life. And you're a guy who's got a way bigger background into this. I mean, you're John the Saint. Talk to us a little bit about getting healthy and why it's so crucial as part of this process.
Again, it's going to be very difficult to be a productive man when your life is not productive. To, lift 300 pounds, you've got to go run a marathon, none of that stuff. I think exercise is important. I spent an hour doing it this morning. I'm not in the shape I was as a young man anymore, but I'm still in decent, relatively good shape. My heart rate good, my cholesterol is good, all that kind of stuff. And and I'm even taking some additional steps because I've found that there's some things as I've grown older that are now causing me issues that are affecting my productivity. And I bring all that up to say this, that if your health is not in a good state, then your work will not be in a good state. Your family life will not be in a good state. So you're going to lose time, you're going to lose money, you're going to lose relationships. So again, you know, there's great trainers out there. There's great things that can help you to be in the best shape that you can be at without having to be a professional athlete. You know, I used to be a professional athlete. That's a hard life. It takes tons of discipline, which oftentimes I didn't have that kind of discipline. But, you know, and there's simple things that we can do to kind of improve our health. And, you know, maybe you don't go for a run, but you go for a walk every morning for an hour. I like to backpack and hike now. I hate running. I've always hated running. Even when I was in the Army, I hated running. That's why I learned how to fight, so I wouldn't have to run. You know, so, but I love to climb mountains, and the solitude and the challenge and the brutality of it, you know, it can be really hard on you. And so, I would say that it's kind of like what the Old Testament talks about when it talks about the presence of the Lord, that it starts from the inside and then it should gravitate towards the outside. It starts from the Holy of Holies and then moves out to the outer courts. So if we start with the mind, it should work from your mind to your body to your relationships. It should flow out. And I go back to kind of Jesus' statement, it's not what goes in, it's what comes out. It's what comes out of us that corrupts us, right? It's not what we eat. It's not even what we say necessarily. It's what's proceeding out of us. And if those things are in right alignment, then what comes out of us should be healthy. It should be productive. It should be valuable. It should build other people up instead of tearing them down. It should develop relationships instead of destroy relationships, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that goes for our body as well. You know, it starts from the heart and it proceeds out, and it should work in our health as well.
Yeah, I would wholeheartedly agree with that. And, you know, so I think that really that key thing is that fourth step is getting healthy. And we're Exceptional Gent. We're going to be bringing all that to the guys here. We've got some great trainers lined up. We've got some real key individuals that we'll be bringing on talking about, you know, things to put into the body that can help you be healthier. You know, you and I are both, we're a little older guys. And so we have to concern our things like testosterone and the amount of vitamin D we intake into our body. So I think yeah, you can supplement exercise to help you out with that process. Plus it gives you time to think. It gives you time to make the choices in your life. I found that treadmill time in the morning, whether I'm walking or stair stepping or whatever, it gives me time to chew on and think about the things that I'm going to be accomplishing in life. So we're kind of coming back to full circle. I think this has been good. We're giving the guys some tools that are really crucial to be able to look at. So to kind of recap, obviously daily goal setting, thinking about what you're thinking about yourself every single day, what's important, what your goals are. I think the next thing is finding a mentor or someone in the community that can be that brother that's going to tell you to pick up your shield and keep going. That's really important. And there are resources that are out there. I know you said there are resources. Talk to us about some of those resources real quick before we end the video.
Yeah. So, you know, one of the greatest resources I've found is just, it's worth the $5, $10, $15, $20 to buy a book from somebody who's been through it.
Yeah.
And there's a ton, and I'll send you a list. One of my favorite books ever is The Gates of Fire by Stephen Pressenfield. It's about Thermopylae. It's a military book. It's fictional, but it's historical fiction. And the lessons in that book, if you read it, are pretty noteworthy. And I can send you, I can actually, because you'll post the video and there will be resource links. I'll just send you a couple.
Wonderful. All right. You know, the next thing is to eliminate those unhealthy friends and those influences in your life. And then finally, we're getting healthy and focusing on getting healthy. And I think that those are, if you guys can, as you're watching this, are thinking, okay, well, this is a bunch of hokey stuff, just start off with the piece about the mental and the self-talk. You know, if you can get those things down just this month and really focus on that for the next 30 days, great. Integrate the other pieces in your life. So, well, John, any final thoughts or anything before we close this out?
Yeah, I just think that, if you look at the state of our country, you look at the state of the world, it's because men have abdicated and we have forgotten what it meant to be warrior gentlemen. And we need to pick it up. And the way that we pick it up is we start with our own mind. And if we understand who we are, and we understand our value and our importance, and then we move forward from the idea that I'm valuable, that I'm important, and that I make a difference, everything changes from there.
Absolutely. John, so well said, and deeply appreciated that you've joined us here in this journey here at Exceptional Gent. We are
I'm excited.
It's neat stuff, and we can't wait to change some guys' lives and turn them into those warrior gentlemen that you speak of. So, John
Awesome.
Rankin, pastor, father, fighter, thinker, philosopher, all the wonderful things. We're looking forward to the next 12 months with you.
Great.
Guys, we'll have a preview of the next one coming up very soon. All right, thanks for joining us this week. Like and share the video down below. Tell your friends about exceptionalgent.com. We are out there and are changing men's lives to help you be better guys in your community, in your home, and in your families. All right, thanks for joining us.
We'll see you soon.